Hey everybody, we're back here with the Go 24/7 podcast. Bryce Koon alongside Sonny Shipp. Sonny, this is the first podcast that you and I get to sit. I've done it with the other guys. Now it's the duo right here.
Yeah, man. I see all the Twitter and I see all the different podcasts that you do and stuff, but this is our first time to hook up, other than text. Hell, this might be the first time we've talked on the phone too.
It might be. It might be. Well, look, it's an exciting time. But before we get started, we want to make sure if you're watching on YouTube to hit the subscribe button, leave a comment, and like the video, and let us know what you think about today's show, which Sonny is a fun one. I mean, look, college football has evolved to the point now where there's really truly is no off season, and so we get to talk about this stuff all throughout the winter months when we're waiting, for media days and everything. But it's first day of school. We're getting there for LSU, which means a lot of new guys on campus. I know you threw up on the board, a picture of those guys and kind of walk us through the process. I mean, the move-in process started for these kids, high school and transfer, late last week, and then into the holiday today is when recording this, and then tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning, first day of classes. So walk us through what's this process like? What are the kids kind of going through as they kind of get acclimated to being in Baton Rouge?
Yeah, got to be an exciting time, especially when you think of some of these kids who just turned from 17 to 18. Some of them aren't even 19 yet,
Yeah.
and just all of a sudden you get to leave home. You just had Christmas. You just had some of them just had these All America games. So spend a week down there, and now all of a sudden, lo and behold, it's time to leave. The little bird is ready to fly away from the nest, so to speak. And we all have those college stories of what that first semester was like away from home.
Oh man,
Some of us
yeah.
probably studied a little more than others. I definitely fall into that latter category. But these guys will be busy. They'll be
Mhm.
busy. They've already had some meetings. Getting moved in, getting situated to the meal plans, getting situated to what will be study halls, and LSU fans will recall that when Brian Kelly first came on, he made a really big deal about how the players started doing everything right from the beginning. And what he
Mhm.
meant by that is he put a lot of emphasis on, how they document their meals. How they do everything. Everything is tracked, and so that's going to be a big adjustment for these guys, especially these high school kids who have just graduated, and they're getting into a situation like this now to where they've got some new apps on their phone that they're probably not used to, other than TikTok and Snapchat and whatever some of those other ones are. But it'll be a whole new process for those guys, and then once they get in, they'll go through some position meetings. They'll kind of get to know their position coaches a little bit more, but they'll jump right into Jake Flint's off-season strength and conditioning program. And we saw several players make some big gains in the weight room from the
Mhm.
time that they enrolled until we got to see them in spring ball. And we'll probably get to see this, and you'll see that again as well. You'll see some guys who really are throwing into some opportunities that look a little more advantageous than others. Like, for instance, the jack linebacker position.
Yeah.
That's a position that guys are going from, either playing an outside linebacker or playing a defensive end position, to where at 240 pounds, they were considered superior to the people that they were going up against. Well, that's going to change now in the SEC. And so they'll have to get adapted to that rather quickly, but they'll get thrown into that strength and conditioning aspect of it. And then you figure that you'll probably, spring practice last year was pushed back so they could have some time to implement the offense, implement the defense a little bit more, get everyone's feet wet a little bit more before they kind of threw it all at them at practice. So it'd be interesting to see when spring practice will start this year. But regardless of when it starts, these freshmen and these transfers, they'll probably have about a good 6 to 7 to maybe 8 weeks of really getting in there, really hitting the weights of these programs. Probably a lot harder than any of them has really done it before.
Yeah, and you think about it too. I mean, for the high school guys, that they're starting tomorrow, Tuesday, in school. A month ago, they were walking around their high school, this big guy on campus, the Letterman jacket, and now Sonny, they're walking in. I don't know what they called it when you were in high school, but it was like you go from being a senior to a freshman. Fresh meat is what the seniors called us. So it's one of those guys, the younger guys in the group, that it's going to be interesting, and that's a hard process. And I like what you talked about with Kelly last year, making sure Not only what you said, but I think also to making sure you create the acclimation process as smooth transition as possible. And look, we saw that with some of the success LSU had this season, some guys that had to step up in some roles. I mean, how pivotal do we see that this past season and setting that standard last year, carrying that throughout the Kelly regime?
Yeah, and he made a big deal out of creating good habits. That creating the right habits of documenting when you go to study hall, of documenting what you eat, of documenting when you eat, making sure you do that you're doing those right things, that those little habits outside of football will lead to better habits once you step onto the field. And I think you're probably going to need a bigger sample size than just one season to
Mm-hmm.
be able to go in and look at that. But you'll be able to go back and you'll be able to look at some of those boneheaded penalties, that the discipline that they establish off the field. You hope that it will help them in those areas like that. And so, probably after the 2023 season, you'll be able to kind of go back and look and see, because, it wasn't a situation where everyone was just completely on board and everyone, you had 100% participation in all of that. He even noted that as things went along through the spring, into the summer, and into the fall, the players kind of got more in line with that. And so, I think you'll see some of the veterans that they will really, they'll take some of these freshmen, they'll take these transfers kind of under their wing. And now you have a situation to where not everyone is trying to learn that all at one time. You have the guys who were here in year one. They can now help these younger guys and help these newcomers into kind of molding them into into the robots that Kelly wants to have them as. Is making sure that you dot every I, cross every T, and that you check every box. Well, it's going to be hard for these guys to do it right off the bat, but having those veterans kind of reinforce that. Now, we all need positive reinforcement in everything that we do in life, and especially for some of these kids who are just leaving home.
Yeah, walking into a situation they've never been a part of. Probably some of them may have gone as far away from home as they've ever been in their entire life. It really is a culture shock that fans may not realize. Look, when we look at this transfer class and this high school class, I know a lot has been made of the portal last year and how when that was one of the first articles that I did, kind of recapping the portal, both offense and defense for last season. But when you look at these classes and these kids are now on campus, most of them are. The defensive back position is one that obviously needed kind of an influx of talent, and give Kelly and the staff, I think they did a good job of identifying some guys to go in there. I mean, obviously, the big name Denver Harris is one that you look at and you're excited about if you're an LSU fan. But how would you just kind of an early, assessment of how did they attack the portal in your opinion? And was it, did what they needed to do? And obviously we know the portal is going to have another opening as well. But kind of right now here, early January, what is your kind of synopsis of what LSU did in that portal?
Yeah, well, if you looked at just the roster that was available for the Citrus Bowl, you had two cornerbacks coming back, LaTerrence Welch and Jordan Allen. The casual LSU football fan probably doesn't know either of those two names because Welch played in every game, but a lot of it was on special teams. So you didn't hear his name called a whole lot, and that's a good thing because usually if your name is called on special teams and you're not returning kicks or punts, it's not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Too often. And so, Seven Banks couldn't play in the game. He was still, I guess, quote unquote, on injured reserve. And so you really, you were as depleted as you could possibly be with guys who were coming back from that game. You had to go out. You had to address that in a big way. Not only did they address it in a big way, you got three high school guys in Javian Tobiano, Jeremiah Hughes, and Ashton Stamps. Two of those three are on campus for the spring.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get Tobiano and you're gonna have Hughes to be able to work them into the rotation this spring. But then throwing those transfers into the mix, Zy Alexander, guy who's played a ton of football at Southeastern. Denver Harris didn't play a whole lot at Texas A&M, played in 5 games, but played enough. And Kelly and his staff, Frank Wilson, they recruited Denver Harris when they first got to town. Didn't last very long, but there's some familiarity there. Of course, with J.K. Johnson, Robert Steeples coached him in high school, so there's some familiarity on that front. And then Deuce Chestnut coming over from Syracuse. So you really, that was the area that you had to absolutely go out and you had to crush it. You had to crush it. And not only did you have to crush it with quality, you had to be able to convince enough guys to come in. And I think the way that they did that was saying, look, we want to play. We don't want to have two corners we put out there for the whole game, and that's it. We want to be able to rotate guys. We want guys to be fresh, because having guys fresh not only is going to help you in that game, but it's going to also help you when November and December rolls around too. Mm-hmm. And so they really had to crush that area. I think that they did. The other area that they had to really hit in the portal, as well as the 2023 class on the high school front, was the jack linebacker position.
Yeah.
Once Xavier Carter left, you had none. You had none on the roster at all. You would have to move Savion Jones from the defensive end spot over to the jack. Within you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because then who are you going to put in that other spot on the side that you took Savion from? So they had to go out and they had to get some guys who have some experience, which I think they did. Bringing in Braden Swinson from Oregon, he's got some experience. And then you brought in another guy from Texas that the staff is very familiar with because he played for him at Notre Dame. And I know I'm going to butcher his name, but Ovi Aghufo.
I was just going to stick with just Ovi. I was going to go big Ovi, the big O. That's what I was going to roll with.
Hey, I make notes in my phone, and I put little notes here and there, and I just put Ovi.
There we go.
The same thing. So we're in the same boat there. But so you got some guys right there. But, man, look at the class you got coming in. You got Jackson Howard, the #1 player in the state of Minnesota. You got Deshaun Womack, a 5-star, Under Armour All-American. You've got him coming in this spring. And a lot of people have already looked at that and said, you know what, if there's a position someone needs to come in and make an immediate impact at, obviously corner is one, but that jack linebacker position is another one. And so to be able to have all of these fresh bodies come in and just be ready to compete, I think it's really it's going to give Matt House an idea early on of what he's going to have to work with, and whether or not he's going to have to be super creative. Kind of like we saw during the season, to where trying to figure out early on, okay, how do I get BJ Ojulari and how do I get Harold Perkins on the field together? Mm-hmm. Because in the beginning, it was having to take BJ off the field and then put Perkins on. But then finally, they realized how they could do that. And so we know that House can be creative, but you would also just like to be able to just play some traditional man-on-man football and say, my man is better than yours, and we're going to beat you with that. You don't want to have to get creative all the time to win every game, because eventually you're going to run out of that. You're going to run out of that creativity.
Yeah, you can only go to the well so many times. And I think, LSU, that was a problem. I wasn't covering the team, but just watching those early games, it was like, man, why is number 40 not on the field along with number 18? I mean, it was just one of those things that we just watched over and over again. But I want to talk about immediate impact. And a lot of times we get really excited when we see the 5 stars right next to the kid's name and the 4 stars. And let's give a lot of credit. You mentioned it earlier in the strength and conditioning. A lot of these kids were dominating at their size at their respective schools, and a lot of them played at really, really good high school programs. But the fact of the matter is, they were the best player on the field. And I've watched a lot of high school football, not nearly as much as you have, and your expertise. But you see these kids that can
casual shot at my age there. I like that.
No, hey, it's no big deal. But you see these kids that can flip a switch on and off, and they can do that in the high school game mentally. What are these young guys, and I'll even say some of the kids in the portal who, maybe they didn't get a lot of playing time. They're coming here. How does that mental aspect change in spring practice and through these workouts for these kids to understand, hey, I've got to have that switch on from the get-go? And what is the expectation of these young guys being able to have an immediate impact? Because as fans, we all want to see that, but, it's not always realistic.
Yeah, I think you can have, even if you have the most gung-ho 18 or 19-year-old kid coming in, like a Deshaun Womack, for instance, got the 5-star by his name and everything. But there's going to be some moments to where he's going to realize, there's going to be some moments to where either coaches, staff, some of the older players are going to tell him, hey man, you got to be able, you got to bring that a lot more than you did today and stuff, because it's just, he doesn't know. He has to learn that. He's been able to not give 110% and just give 100 and be just fine. Well, now you got to give you got to give 100 and then some. And so that's going to be the acclimation point for him. And I think that and having them come in the spring and having the number of guys come in for the spring that they have, I think is going to help them, because used to be you'd have some classes where you may have 2, you may have 3 early enrollees. You don't have that many. Well, now there's so many newcomers there. Now to when they're looking in line, they're like, okay, I'm not the only one who's going to mess up. It's their turn to do the rep on the, whatever they're doing in the weight room. And, it's all about learning. It's all about realizing what's going on, reaching a certain comfort level, because until they reach that comfort level, they're always going to be thinking. They're always going to be processing something. And if you're having to always think and you're having to always process something, if the mind is going 100 miles an hour, the body's not going to be able to go 100 too. And so having all these guys come into the spring and be able to get acclimated like that, I think it's going to, not only having them come in for the spring benefits them, but having that many come in together is going to give them all, I think, a certain comfort level that's going to help them get acclimated a little bit quicker.
And it creates some really good competition in spring practice, spring game, and then obviously builds that camaraderie into the summer. I want to flip it over to the offensive side of the football, and a guy that I'm really excited about. I know that LSU was in on him as a high school recruit, him being from New Orleans, Aaron Anderson. And look, I mean, we all saw the high school tape when he was playing down in New Orleans. Andrew Ivins with 24/7 Sports, I mean, his pro comparison was Jalen Waddle. That's pretty lofty expectations when you see a guy that can fly like he can, but there's a couple of guys on this offensive side of the football that they added, specifically in that wide receiver room, high school and, transfer portal, where it helps out, in my opinion, the current guys that are there. And I don't know about you, Sonny, but when I look at this, I think this really has the makings. If guys develop and take that step forward, and we see the guys that are currently there get better, this could be a really, really improved, exciting, complete group out on the edge with the wide receiver room.
Yeah, and when you have an area, Jack linebacker, for instance, cornerback, we talked about those two. When you have a position that you really need to improve on a lot more than you did the year before, I think if you look at the LSU, let's say you look at offense, defense, special teams, you can look at it all. Special teams, what? Somebody says special teams, LSU. Okay. We know about we know about some of the issues that LSU had. A lot of it all kind of revolved around the punt return game. And LSU wasn't able to really get someone in there who they felt super comfortable about. Gregory Clayton, I guess in November, you kind of felt a little more comfortable about him being able to field the ball. But just fielding the ball was a win for LSU because you had so many issues early on. And Aaron Anderson, he was a dynamic receiver in high school when he played at Carr, but he was also a dynamic return guy.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he returned as a junior, he returned 3 or 4 punts and kicks for touchdowns. So he really adds that element that the locker room was missing last year. Malik Neighbors, we all thought that he would have been really good at doing that, but he had some he had his issue early on, and he was never really they never really went back to it after that. So getting Aaron Anderson in for the spring, I think is huge. Huge in the terms that you get him on campus early, but also huge in the aspect that you have all spring, you have all summer of him catching punts, of him fielding punts, of him working on the jugs gun, of him just getting more and more comfortable in that department. And you're not having to train someone who didn't do a lot of this in high school. Malik Neighbors, you go down the list, you look at these wide receivers, Shelton Sampson Jr., they've all returned kicks and punts at some point because they've been one of the most dynamic players on the field. They can run, They could catch, so they all had some time back there. But to get someone who is truly comfortable at fielding those punts and having to go through judging the ball, tracking the ball, and then being able to make something happen afterwards, I think it's going to really open up the LSU offense a little bit, even though it's on special teams, because it's going to give them some momentum. It can potentially give them better field position. And so I think that's probably, when you look at the offense and the newcomers coming in, for me, that's the one area that I'm like, okay, it's great to have this guy coming in this spring, because you're not trying to fix something, in a pinch. You're not trying to fix something very quickly. Now you've got all spring, you've got all summer to really kind of just fine tune that position and just get him completely comfortable there.
I want to add this on. It doesn't necessarily have to do with the guys coming in, but it does talk about that, getting guys acclimated. When you look at guys last year that came in and had to learn what it was like to be an LSU Tiger, learn what it was like to be on campus, getting around campus, is it safe to say that some of the guys that were brought in last year in their first year now have a year under their belt of knowing what this is, can go into spring practice, can go into these workouts, these, this strength and conditioning program with a little bit more confidence? And yeah, I'm thinking of a guy like Jaden Daniels, who now doesn't have to worry about, how do I get to this building or something like that? He can just worry about football. So those guys have a year in. I mean, we'll kind of end it with this. I mean, how big is it for them to have a spring where now they can just worry about playing football, being a better player, and being a better teammate?
Yeah, Jaden Daniels is a good example. Greg Brooks Jr. flipping over to the other side of the ball. Greg Brooks Jr. is another guy. I think as the season went along, you kind of started to see him making more plays. You saw him, involved in more turnovers and things of that nature. And, so I think, he goes from a guy who left Arkansas. You get over to Baton Rouge, you're getting used to the workouts. You already know some of the players and stuff. You've been to LSU's campus and everything, but it's still different. It's still an adjustment period that you have to go through. Well, now he can help these other guys go through that adjustment period. He's not a transfer who came in and was one and done, like a Mekhi Garner, like a Jarrett Bernard Converse, like some of those other guys. So he not only gives you a veteran presence in that locker room, but he can also relate to what these transfers are going through. He can relate to what some of these high school kids are going through as well. You look at Jackson Howard, the number one player out of Minnesota. I mean, hell, can you imagine what Minnesota weather is like right now compared to what he's seeing here in Baton Rouge? Just little things like that. Little things like that we kind of take for granted. But if 24/7 called and said, "Hey, Sonny, we need you to move up to Minnesota and go up there or whatever," I would not be anywhere near ready for a move.
I don't know if you have the winter clothes ready for that.
But you have Jackson Howard, you have a Deshaun Womack, you have Jaylen Brown, leaving Miami. You have Jeremiah Hughes leaving Nevada, coming down to Baton Rouge. And so these cross-country moves, not only do they take time when you think about the physical aspect and the mental aspect of playing football, but you also have the mental aspect of just being an 18, 19-year-old kid away from home. That I can attest to. There's a lot of trouble you can get into as an 18 and 19-year-old kid if you're not careful, if you're not smart about it. And so, these guys are going to face the same things that we faced when we were freshmen in college and stuff. Mm-hmm. So there's an acclimation period, but I think it's got to be also so exciting. It's got to be so exciting because you're leaving home, you're leaving everything that is your comfort zone that you've had forever, but you're walking into a system that is so structured, that has so many steps and elements to it to just help you to succeed. There's no reason any of these kids should not succeed because of everything that they have laid out in front of them. And, I think that, that's a testament to Brian Kelly. That's a testament to his support staff. That's a testament to all of the coaches and everyone involved in this, because there's such a process that has to take place, outside of the 12 Saturdays that we watch these kids on TV or whatever. There's a process. There's so much involved into molding these players into being able to make those plays on Saturdays. And for coaches and the personnel who recruited these kids, who recruited these transfers, that's got to be the exciting part. Yeah, you like seeing that signature and everything. You like getting that national letter of intent when it's signed in and everything. But now you actually get to touch, you get to hold, you get to give them a hug, you get to feel the presence that you have coming into your program now. And I can only imagine from a coach, from a support staff point of view, man, that's got to be so exciting.
Well, and it's also probably feels pretty like a job well done in a sense of you've courted this kid for, I mean, some kids 2-3 years, and
Right.
you finally get to see them, in the purple and gold on your campus, working out in the weight room and different things like that. No, it is an exciting time. It's truly why I think there's no off season. Sonny, appreciate the time, man. It's been a lot of fun talking this, and I know that we're going to kind of hit back on this, but a lot of fun names that you can go check out on Go 24/7. Make sure, if you're not a VIP member, make sure you do that. We have some great content rolling in with the team. A lot of fun. Sonny's had to tell Glenn to pump the brakes a little bit, because Glenn, I've realized early on, Sonny, Glenn is a machine. The man is just a machine that keeps going and going.
Yeah. He's like that 6'10" Energizer bunny.
Absolutely love it. Well, look, my name is Bryce Koon. He is Sonny Shipp. This is the Go 24/7 podcast. If you watched us on YouTube, make sure hit subscribe, set up those notifications for when we have the next video. We're going to be doing some amazing content as we get closer and closer to spring practice. And Sonny, we won't harp on it too much, but this is a lot more fun than talking about football than where the men's basketball team is right now.
Hey, that's another podcast in itself.
Another podcast for another day. This is all the time we have for. Make sure to check us out on Go 24/7. We can't wait to see you on the boards if you're already a VIP member. And if you're not, make sure you do that right now. We'll see you next time here on the Go 24/7 podcast.